The show, National Taxpayers Union Executive Vice President. He is Brandon Arnold. We love this guy. He's great. Okay, the more the White House pushes on the narrative and try to control it, the more it falls apart. Let's take this on first. The Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center says up to a fifth, even nearly a third of middle-class taxpayers would pay more in taxes next year, and millionaires would get a tax cut in the Democrat spending plan. Now, the tax hike is small, a few $100, not quite, the George H.W. read my lips, no new taxes moment. But Brandon, he can't campaign on this anymore, right? That he was going to cut the middle and lower income taxes.
No, I don't think so. Every iteration of the bill that we've seen, the more they rework it, the more we get the same result. Middle income taxpayers are going to pay more. And that's happening because of the gimmicky nature of these tax provisions, because they're trying to provide benefits just for a short period of time and then take those benefits away. What happens is that people making as low as $30,000, $27,000 are potentially going to see a reduction in after-tax income. That's unfair and it's wrong, especially at a time when so many families are dealing with inflation.
And when you cement those programs in place, right? The state income taxes will go up when the federal revenue doesn't cover it. So your state taxes will likely go up. Also let's move on to this. The Washington Post has been fact-checking the White House claims that Nobel Prize winners say more government spending will cut inflation in the short term. Wrong. That's what the White House is saying in the short term. Wrong. They said it would cut it in the long term if you make the investments and get more Americans working and productive. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that's right. What the Nobel laureates are saying is that in the long term, if you make sound investments in infrastructure, you make sure that interstate highways are functioning properly, that bridges are sound, that we have the ability to move goods and services around this country, that it's positive for economic development. It does not mean that in the near term, in the short term, that this type of spending is going to reduce inflation. This administration is completely spinning, turning those numbers upside down and trying to use those to make the argument for a plan that will increase inflation in the short term, that will juice the economy even more and facilitate more consumer demand. That's not what we need right now.
And what we're also seeing, the Washington Post also fact-checking Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is citing, quote, racist bridges as a reason for more spending. Historians have debunked that story. Watch the Transportation Secretary here.
I'm still surprised that some people were surprised when I pointed to the fact that if a highway was built for the purpose of dividing a white and a black neighborhood, or if an underpass was constructed such that a bus carrying mostly black and Puerto Rican kids to a beach, or that would have been in New York, was designed too low for it to pass by, that obviously reflects racism that went into those design choices.
Okay, the bridge overpass story is not a fact. It's not obvious. He's referencing Robert Cairo's book about Robert Moses, who's, has made racist comments. He made it harder for people of color to visit properties. Historians looked at this. Moses purposely built parkway bridges that were already in use, that had overpasses that were low. It was about aesthetics, it was about cost, and it was about much more. The historians have roundly debunked this. The Transportation Secretary is reporting it as if it's a fact. It's not.
Yeah, what's amazing to me here is that the Secretary of Transportation wants to have an argument about racist bridges at a time when his agency is about to get over $1 trillion in order to improve this nation's infrastructure. He has an enormous task. He should be the busiest guy in Washington right now as he begins to figure out where we should invest these dollars to make sure our infrastructure is sound. And instead, we're talking about a racist bridge in New York that was built decades ago. Where are this guy's priorities right now?
And, historians confirm that, you could get to Jones Beach here on Long Island by train and by bus. And the other thing, too, is parkways were only meant for cars, not for buses. By the way, the size of those buses back then, Transportation Secretary, they were tiny. They were not the double-deckers. Those double-deckers were on rails, the trolley cars. So, I don't know, when you start hearing the talks about facts, you got to say, wait a second, the narrative is so off the wall coming out of the White House. Brandon Arnold, thank you for coming on and squaring it with us. Good to see you. We're coming out of the bottom of the hour right now. You're watching the Fox Business Network.